So I'm delighted to introduce another of our very special guests today, a face familiar to many of you, I am sure. Actress, model, artist, what haven't you done? Anneke Wills.
Thank you. More! Yay! I love it, it's food.
Now, everyone's been very diplomatic and not given too much away, but you have a reputation as being the bad girl of the convention circuit, so
have I really?
We're expecting salaciousness.
I thought that was Frances Barber.
But it's not as if you've led a quiet and retiring life, is it? Actually, I'll move forward a bit so you're facing the front of the camera, so people can see your lovely
That's kind
face.
of you because of my stiff neck. No, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it seems as though I seem to have wanted to live a few lives all packed into one. You know, just one life wasn't going to be enough for me. I needed to do a lot.
Yes.
You know.
Clearly, there's a lot of energy and vitality to sort of be let out, and you've certainly not been shy about pursuing goals and dreams where possible throughout your career, it would seem.
Yes, I didn't really ever. You're good. He's a good interviewer. He's very good because he draws you out. I don't think that I was ever really had goals. I didn't have goals. I just, followed my nose and followed sort of what was up. I didn't sort of have, that's what I want to do and then I'm going to work away until I get there. I never had enough patience for that. If it wasn't coming at once, I'm off to do something else,
So what was it? I mean, what was when you were very young?
Yes.
You must have had some vague idea of perhaps where you wanted to be.
No, but you see that the wonderful thing is, that I believe that we are all recycled and that we go on and on. So what happens is that we come into our lives carrying on where we left off. You see. So for me, by the age 6, I'm doing very intricate still lives. So I'm already painting. And by age 8, I'd written and acted and starred in my first play at school. So acting and painting and being involved with creative people, I immediately created that in my life. So I carried on from where I left off.
I'm sort of getting a picture that it's not, you didn't necessarily have what we might term as a sort of archetypal parents who would say, no, we want you to do this. You seem to have had an awful lot of freedom.
Yes, but then again, you see, at a certain level, you choose your parents. So I chose the perfect parents, you see, because they were the stable for me to do what I wanted to do. Basically, my father wasn't there. And my mother was, sort of a very unique, mad woman, but she was very unique. She was a one-off. She didn't follow any of the rules. So I chose the perfect parents.
Yeah. You say she didn't follow the rules. This is, without wishing to be immodest, sort of getting back towards the war and thereabouts. That in itself is quite a landmark sort of time in which to have your formative years. How did that sort of impinge on?
Yes. Well, one thing is that what I love, and I think what happens when you get to this age, you start to looking back to your childhood a lot. And one of the things I love is that we were very healthy. They were very healthy in the war because we ate such good food, such simple good food. And my mother was. She was so brave, actually, because she was Dutch and her husband had buggered off, basically, and she had 2 young children, and she's living in England with her own family in Holland, her mother having died of starvation. So it was tough for her. And she took us to a school in Bath, and where she was growing vegetables. And previous to that, she'd been a model, so she knew nothing about growing vegetables, but she knew she had to get a job.
Yes.
So she sort of bullshitted her way in and said, "Oh well," and she called a cabbage something else, and the women were looking at her, and she said, "Oh well, it's different in Holland." But so she grew the vegetables, and we could be at the school. So she was very brave, got on with it.
Did you have a good relationship with your mother as you grew up?
Oh no, we fought like cat and dog the whole time. You know, she was very difficult. It's only in retrospect that I appreciate who she was, because she was unique, and so therefore, and very outspoken and very maddening. She used to drive me mad. But now I love her very much.
Do you have any regrets that you've sort of come to that conclusion now? Did you sort of reconcile and able to tell her how much you appreciated what she perhaps
a little bit,
unconsciously done?
just as she was dying a little bit, but not enough. I think that that's one of the sort of stories of one's life, you know, is that you carry guilt.
Yeah.
So I carried guilt for a while. But I think it comes back to haunt you, because my son doesn't have any time for me. So watch out what you do in life, because, you know, it's karmic, you know, it will come back.
It's all cyclical, it will all sort of come around again.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
but I was thinking this morning as I was tarting up to come here to see you all today, you know, I'm going to be 71 in a month. And my mother died when she was 72, and in my memory she was an old woman, you know. So in this way we've changed, we go on longer, and I'm very grateful for having the energy and the health, you know, still to be. We better touch a bit of wood here, because I've lost a lot of friends, haven't we?
There's a bit there,
you know,
that'll do the
lost
job,
a few,
just there.
few Doctor Who friends, here, come here.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes, because it's unfortunately rather a sad time in Doctor Who world. We're just losing so many people. It's ridiculous at the moment. So we're very grateful you're still with us.
Yes. Love me while I'm here.
Autographs available later at very reasonable cost. So, I mean, when did you... I mean, what was your first, what we might loosely term, career?
Yes, I did a film when I was 10. Got pictures of that. So sweet. And it was a film with about a group of children, and they were creating an atom bomb. It was called Child's Play. It wasn't the horror film. There was a horror film called Child's Play. It wasn't that one. It was a very sweet little film. It is available. You can actually get it. And there we all are. Christopher Beanie is in it. Lovely
Good
Christopher
heavens.
Beanie from Upstairs Downstairs.
Yes.
So sweet in his little shorts, and he was so talented. And all the kids, those of you who've heard these stories before, go to sleep and I'll wake you up later. All the children in that film went to a drama school, so that in a way then I did have a goal, because I thought, right, that's what I want. And in a very short space of time, I took exams, funny sort of exams, and I got a scholarship and I got into the drama school. The Arts Educational, one of the best drama schools. Fraser will tell you that Corona was the best drama school, but it wasn't. The Arts Education was the best drama school at the time.
I would think just about every actor who's been to drama school will say the one they went to clearly turned out the best.
Ours was the best. And immediately started working on television. And started doing children's television in the days when Christopher was talking about it was live. So I was used to that, working in Lime Grove. And what you did was you went along and you did your play on the Thursday, and then you went back and you did it again on the Sunday, because they came out on Thursdays and Sundays. Yeah. And they were wonderful dramas. They were incredibly good television.
Did you have a television at home?
Eventually we got one, and I remember that my younger brother, my mother is saying, come on, hurry up, Annika's going to be on. And he said, that's all right, she won't start till I'm ready. A sort of lovely sort of thing of, you know, different dimensions, you know. Yeah.
Did that sort of ruin the illusion in a way? Because you sort of think, we always think that our child's mind is not the most flexible thing, but it's incredibly flexible. Did it not ruin you having a television at home and then going to Lime Grove and seeing how the magic was done?
No, because being a part of it, you know, was so... frightening, also frightening. I remember the very first one I did, and this old actress, and I'm saying, I'm really scared. And she said, no, there's nothing to be afraid of, my dear. And then we started working, doing it, and she had a cup, and the cup was shaking. And I was doing all right until then, and then I thought, oh, holy shit, this is frightening. You know?
She's just acting, damn it. Wonderful. But you're also I mean, even then, you weren't sticking to one thing. You were sort of diversifying and doing other things. There was a bit of child modelling, I think, at that stage.
No.
If I'm obviously
got
remembering
that
things
wrong.
incorrectly.
No, I was full on then, focused on that, and and focused then on being a drama student, and I wanted to be sort of Judi Dench or something. I wanted to be a really serious classical actress. Well, didn't we all? Did you?
Only at weekends. This sort of takes us through into your sort of teenage years. What was it like growing up? Because London seems to have been a real sort of hotbed of creativity. Yes, this is sort of milk bar and coffee bar kind of sort of time, and there's that wonderful sort of emergence of youth as a force of nature. Yes, you were part of. Clearly, you were part of that.
Yes, it was. Yes, London in those days, it seemed much more like a sort of village actually, and and there were lovely things like. I'm so old, you see. You could get in your car and drive to Harrods and park outside and go and do a bit of shopping. In those days, but then later on, can I go into later on
yes, of course,
already?
ma'am. Absolutely.
So later on, we would then go into the end of the 50s into the 60s, and then it was very exciting because then this was the explosion of the real 60s creativity, and to have naturally grown into that, not sort of thrust into it, but sort of having grown organically out of your friends and people that you knew and people that you worked with, and then to meet people like Peter Cook, and Dudley Moore, and going to their club, it felt like the best place in the world actually to be amongst these people.
And your star was sort of very much coming into the ascendancy. You were getting
well, they
better
loved
roles.
it because I'd been in Doctor Who. So they loved that, you see. So I was their Doctor Who companion, part of that.
It's funny to think of it too, such sort of satirical kind of because
I know.
And thinking, and then Doctor Who, which in some ways is about as establishment as it gets in one sense.
Yes.
Which is quite extraordinary.
Yes.
So
we've leapt. I'm sorry, we've leapt, and you're going in a lovely progression.
I'm not going to go linear. I don't have to do linear. But we will wind it back, obviously, because what I wanted to look at is the road that led you toward Doctor Who. Because as we all know, it's about chance meetings and chance encounters. Because you were originally going to be, you were on the shortlist to play Susan originally. You were down to be seen for that, I think, weren't you?
Well, you see, the thing was that since I'd been a child actress and working through, everybody in the BBC actually knew of me. So if there was a part for somebody like me, I usually got it. That's not showing off. It just was, that's what happened. And so the casting people, they knew of me. So I would always be on the list. But I never actually... I wasn't aware of that. I always felt that every part I got, that was a bit of luck, because you're never, as an actor, you're never that secure, You don't think, well, this is cushy, I'm going to get every part that's coming along. You don't think that. You think, oh, God, I just managed to get that one, amazing. But I had been doing, prior to Doctor Who, I had been doing big dramas. I'd been doing plays of the week and stuff like that, and doing the sort of the major roles with the other actor and so forth. So I was working my way up now, and getting more noticed and getting notices and so forth. Yeah.
I mean, you talk about luck, but you and I both know luck plays no part. You make your own luck. Were you sort of conscious of perhaps not manipulating, but certainly being aware of who you're talking to and making sure you're saying the right things?
I remember going in for auditions and things, and always being, finding out what the character was that they wanted, and then dressing vaguely appropriately, and then hoping that you could kind of make a sort of magic thing where they would see you as this character. Yeah. So it was a kind of, you were already acting,
Yes.
And that it was always incredibly, you were so nervous. And then you'd go rushing home, and of course no mobile phone, so you had to stay stuck by the phone, waiting did the agent ring today? No, and you waited and you waited. There was one time when I went for a wonderful audition for the Royal Shakespeare Company, and I thought, this is it. Oh, this would be really good if I can swing this one. And I went onto Drury Lane stage, which is huge, it's enormous, and I had been working on my voice to get it really strong so that I could bring it out quite naturally and that it would be very big. Oh, no. And up I went and I did my audition for John Barton, who's so brilliant. And then I did my little speech, and then which was all sort of perfect because I'd worked on it. So he said, okay, now what I want you to do is, now you're going to do this speech, but I am a drunken actor in the wings, and I'm going to come on and ruin your thing any minute. So now how are you going to play it? So then we played it in this way. And then he said, okay. And then each time he was doing something else. By the time I came out of this audition, I was as high as a kite. I drove down the Mall, and I remember in my little mini car, I'm thinking, I'm so powerful. I felt like I could just take off over Buckingham Palace. Whee! I've done it. I was so thrilled. And got home, waited for a week. Nothing from the agent. Have they come? No, nothing. After 2 weeks, it was like a cancer that had grown in me. I thought, they didn't love me. They thought I was embarrassing. Now I've been shown up. You see, I can't actually act at all. Got to hide in a hole. And my husband then, Michael Gough, was saying, you see, this is the trouble, when you don't get the work. Later on, I would hear it was Helen Mirren who got the part, and her boyfriend was the director.
Oh, well.
So that's the way it works. But it didn't matter, because a week or two later I got Doctor Who. Yes!
All things are meant to be.
So sod the Shakespeare. Bring on Doctor Who. If I had done the Shakespeare, do you think I would still be able to come out and meet all these lovely people and have so much fun? No.
As you say, all sort of meant to be.
I'll be out of work.
Yes. Joining the rest of us.
Yeah.
How did you and Michael meet? Because we sort of skipped on to all of a sudden, you're very grown up, driving down the Mall, and Michael Gough is
Michael
your husband.
Well, I'd met him on a film. I met him on a film. I wasn't very well. I'd got a cold, and I was down in Denham Studios or somewhere. Teddington Studios, difficult to get to if you don't have a car. And I'd got a cold, and I was sitting in the makeup chair feeling miserable, and this voice opened the door and said, I'll be with you in a minute, darling. This beautiful, I called it a dark brown voice. And I said, who's that? And she said, oh, that's Michael Gough. You're playing your scene with him today. And I had already seen him as a child in doing Chekhov. And I thought, man, I'm going to do my scene with Michael Gough. Wait till I tell my mother, because she thought he was marvellous. So we played this scene together, and we got on just like we were talking all day long, and we were too busy to do the thing because we had so much to talk about. We were talking about art and painting and horses and photography and everything. And at the end, he said, would you like a lift home? And when he came to pick me up, he was wearing a sort of rather loud sort of check suit. And I had once had a lift home from rehearsals with Lawrence Payne, and you probably don't remember him, but anyway, and I'm a young actress, and he's driving me home, and he suddenly started saying, do you like rubber? And when I saw Michael Gough in his weird suit, I thought, oh, it's going to be another thing of, do you like rubber? Macintoshes, So I was a bit worried, but he was fine, and went home to his lovely house, met his daughter, and just thought he was lovely. So then a little bit later in my life, I'm now pregnant and not married and in a bit of trouble. So where am I going to stay? And I think, I'll ring up that Michael Gough, because he had a big flat, and maybe I can have a little room in the back of the flat. And so I went to have lunch with him, and I'm sitting in my little muumuu. Phoenix had muumuus then, which were sort of baggy. And I was only about 3 months pregnant, but I felt, and I said, well, I've got a big secret to tell you. And I said, I'm pregnant. He said, yes, I know. And I said, I wonder if I could have a room in your flat. And he said, yes. Well, by the time my daughter was born, we were in love, and so that was that. Oh,
All meant to
so
happen.
magic.
All meant to
So magic, yes.
Now, you mentioned you and he had the photography and the writing and the horses and all that sort of.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't sound like with this jet set life, for the sake of a better term, you would have time to fit all of those in. But somehow you seem to manage to shoehorn your other interests in somehow.
Yes.
Did you ever sort of consider switching horses at that stage to go into art or something else? Were you selling paintings and drawings?
No. Yes, I was. Because a little bit before that, I just lived with so many people. I lived with Tony Newley, and he had a dressing room, and I had my paintings in his dressing room, and people like Sammy Davis came in and bought them. So I was selling rather well to actors. Actors would buy my work.
Yes.
So that was always, it wasn't like a hobby, it was two. Yeah. I was always doing both, yes. Yeah.
And then along came Doctor Who with, I guess initially a year's contract.
No contract at all.
Contracts.
No, I never had a contract. They just took me on, and then we'll see.
Because it sounds to me, forgive me for saying so, but you're very much a sort of a butterfly. You like to sort of flit from thing to thing. Sticking with the one show for a significant length of time, because with the amount of rehearsals and filming and location filming, everybody says what a weight it was. It doesn't immediately strike me that a regular role would be your thing.
No, I think I might have balked at that, So no, it wasn't. It was, we do one story and then we'll see. And then at the end of the War Machines, well, that's good, we'll do another story. Oh, great, hey, this is getting rather regular. And the trouble is, you see, what worried me was that if I had the money each week, I'd get hooked to it, you see, because you do.
Yes.
It's like smoking. One little faggy and you're off. So then you want more. So, and I wasn't sure. I know that right at the end, can we leap just to the end a moment? So because when they came and said, okay, Michael's going to, we're going to ask Michael to go. Christopher, are you going to come up and talk now?
He's going to come join us.
I thought, oh no, this is a relief actually, because otherwise I'd be like Coronation Street. I'd be in it forever, until my hair was grey. Well, and I had other things to do.
Absolutely. And we'll find out more about those with the aid of the wonderful Christopher Barry, who is making his way to the front of the stage. Oh, you're pretty much tied down, I'm afraid, my dear.
I want to give him enough room.
Pretty well sort of fixed.
This is so lovely, because we've never actually done it together.
Good heavens, really?
Are you going to help?
You're going to fix me up?
Yeah.
Help him. We've never actually been up on stage and talked together, which is mad, really, when you think that. Will you hang on to my space?
I will.
I'm afraid I'll squash them.
I have a pocket here.
When you think that what we were doing was the most important story of all time.
Well, actually, you were saying you've going from story to story. You'd done two with William Hartnell before the summer break. You'd done the War Machines, you'd done the Smugglers, and presumably had a fantastic time down on the Cornish coast.
Yes, because Bill Hartnell wasn't there. So we could be really naughty in the pubs and stuff.
More than one tale to be there. And then you come back after, it's about 4 weeks off you got in the summer, I think.
Yes.
To be met with the news that that Bill's leaving and being replaced by Patrick Troughton. How did that sort of feel? Because that must have been something of a shock to find the company leaders suddenly being shunted off.
Do you know what? It was the main feeling that I remember was relief.
Yeah?
It was relief, because Bill was patently, obviously, not able to do it anymore, and he was so crotchety, and it was so painful for all of us around him. And I think before the summer break there'd been this talk, because I remember that we went for the summer break and there were all this talk about who would do it, and there was Tommy Steele was one of them. Really? Michael Hordern was another one.
Yes,
amazing. And then suddenly it was Patrick. And then that
wonderful.
And Patrick, of course, was already a friend of yours. So when you got the gig, you must have been thinking, "Oh, wonderful!
Well,
I get to work with my favourite actor."
And it was a first for me, and it came subsequently a first for me with other doctors, as you know. But yes, Patrick was a good friend. I mean, we knew each other socially and went to each other's homes and that sort of thing.
I want to ask you, Chris, were you involved in the meetings with Patrick when he was busy saying, no, this is silly. You can't replace, Bill Hartnell. Were you one part of the people?
I don't think so.
Persuading him?
No. He may have asked me, I don't remember, I'm afraid, but he may well have asked me, they want me to do Doctor Who, but I don't remember.
You don't remember?
No.
So where you started was rehearsals first day?
Yes. Oh, I'm shouting, sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
We were hearing from Edward earlier on, while I recorded interview, that he was delighted that Patrick took over because from a purely selfish actor's point of view, he got an extra week's pay because you got given 2 weeks to do the first episode. Is that right?
Don't remember.
Ooh. Stamp me, I don't remember.
And you get an extra week's rehearsal whilst...
well, he was broken in to give him longer to I don't remember that. Do you remember that?
Don't remember.
No.
Don't remember. I remember the day when we filmed The Regeneration.
Yes.
And on either end of the studio they were lying on the floor. And it took a long time, didn't it?
Yes, had to have the two cameras absolutely lined up and put
Yes.
the image one on the other and make it work and be happy with it.
Yes, yes.
It must have been quite a responsibility to come in to helm a show which was very successful at that point, not as successful as it had been, but was still quite successful, and have to rejuvenate the whole sort of thing with a new actor. Did you find the experience of having done the 4 previous adventures was helpful or detrimental to that?
Oh, I think helpful. Yeah? One knew where one was heading, where one was going, what one was trying to achieve. Yeah.
And of course you inherited the rest of a regular cast.
Yes.
Which is always very, very useful.
Yeah.
Had the two of you worked together before? Because you both seem to have been orbiting the BBC quite a lot.
I don't think so.
No, because when I first got into the BBC, I love to say this, just if you've heard it before, never mind, but the BBC at that time was full of talented gentlemen in tweeds. This is who they were, and he was one of them, And we were very grateful to be directed by people like this because we're learning all the time, So Michael and I were very humble and humbly happy.
Yes, because your agent had done clearly a better job than his had because you were getting significantly more money per week, so you were doing quite well.
Is it true?
Did
I get more?
It is. You got rather more than they did.
Well, that makes a nice male difference.
Absolutely.
Well, you were one of the prominent people in the story, whereas he only came in as a casual story, didn't he?
I
think it's probably fair to say you generally got more of the script in the earlier ones. I think because you were perhaps considered more of a long-term one. They didn't know quite. I think that there was a feeling that they didn't quite know where Michael was going to fit.
Yes.
Because it's always difficult to put a male companion, as subsequent producers have found, putting a male companion in the TARDIS can be very difficult. With William, of course, Michael could do all the physical stuff.
Yes.
But then Patrick comes along and changes the whole dynamic. How did you find that when Patrick took over? Because it's a very different vibe on the show, very suddenly.
Listen, the thing was we knew at the time that this was an incredible gift to be able to be working alongside somebody of the likes of Patrick Troughton, and that he was busy creating this character. This was the most exciting place to be in the world, actually, around this man who was, he was...
giving off sparks, really, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. He was sparking off. And it was, we were a part of it. Amazing.
He had something of a reputation for being very difficult to pin down off camera. Is that very much the persona he had when he was on camera in the studio working with the rest of you?
I don't think so, but I think, like many actors, he kept his actual performance under wraps a little bit. So in rehearsal, you saw him partially doing it, but not all the way.
Yes.
And then in the show, he would really sparkle.
Yes.
You agree?
That's right. Yes, that's right.
Was there a feeling that the powers that be were watching very carefully on this over your shoulders to sort of see how it was turning out?
Oh, I'm sure they were, but they didn't make themselves overly conscious to us. Sidney Newman, of course, as everybody knows, was very concerned about this hobo and how he was dressed, and we had to take his costume down a bit early on, but it worked very well in the end.
And also the public, it wasn't an overnight success with the public, was it? They weren't
No, I
sure.
think they didn't know how to take it. They had got to know this elderly gentleman
yes.
As Doctor Who, and to find this rather comical character suddenly inhabiting the same character took a bit of adjusting to.
Yes, yes. And then he took that on board with great anxiety. He was very anxious that he would get it right, you know. So he was very sensitive, which is why when we did the terrible joke with the T-shirts, "Come back, Bill Hartnell, all is forgiven," you know, he got terribly upset.
He was quite upset.
Yes, he was upset.
Edward was telling us a little story, how in rehearsals Patrick would be experimenting with his recorder, and there was a lovely little, it's a real pity actually that Michael Troughton can't be with us today.
I know. I was also really looking forward.
It was going to be lovely to get through together, because Edward remembers in rehearsal that Patrick had this little tune he was playing, which he says his little son had composed, and I'm assuming by working out the numbers that must have been Michael playing around and composing this thing, and Patrick trying to get a credit for him. Were you conscious of that sort of?
What I remember was that he was wanting to find little songs, and Mick Goff had taught me a lullaby, which was an Irish lullaby, which I used to sing to my children. And so that's the one that he plays, dee, 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 dee. So I taught him that one. And, I'm going to show off now.
Go on.
I also taught him how to do the glass. I could do the glasses.
The wetting your finger and...
Yes, so we all hung around in rehearsals practicing with glasses.
Oh, yes.
Ooh.
You should have to do that.
I'm somehow picturing this up in the BBC bar with you all set with a range of...
Listen, where did we do our I know where we did our rehearsals. Was it at Riverside we were doing, or were we already in...
You're trying...
I think you're at Riverside.
I think
you're filming at Riverside at this point.
Seems to me.
I think we probably were.
But what we would do was whip over at lunchtime to the BBC bar in Television Centre, and then back to rehearsals, giggling.
Really?
I remember doing that.
No, we didn't tell you.
All part of the new regime. So what's it like coming in to direct one of the bright young things, suddenly with Annika there, sparkling away on set?
Well, it's always wonderful to have such a charming young lady in our presence.
Sweetheart.
And a good actress too, to boot.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, to boot off the set. No, I don't mean it.
You know, in retrospect, it was so naughty, because I remember I had a stripy dressy which only came just below the knickers. I mean, how could people concentrate? It was really naughty. You know, you should have said, "Oi, you know, jeans for you." Can't concentrate.
No, those days were very, very difficult for young men, and I was a fairly young man then.
No.
Must look back with great affection at all, but it sounds like it's a very different set to work on in 1966 with Pat than it was with Bill. Yes. And I don't mean that detrimentally to Bill, because he's a senior actor, he's a senior figure in the profession, he's not a well man. And then Patrick comes along and electrifies it. Is that one of those things? People talk about John Major, who always comes across very kind of flat and staged when he's being interviewed. And people say that behind the scenes in Downing Street, he was just electric. Was it more of a thing that Patrick had electrified the set more than the screen, perhaps?
Well, I suppose everybody concerned was very impressed by the difference and the excitement created by that difference. And what was it going to be like, and how would it work, and everything. So, yes, there was a definite sort of feeling, a buzz on the set and everywhere.
Yes.
Because there was a lot of hoo-ha about the script at the time, because David Whittaker had written it with nobody particular in mind, and as it's told, there were screeds and screeds for the Doctor to say, which Patrick wasn't necessarily keen on.
I don't remember that, I'm afraid.
I tell you while we're here, and I'm dying to ask you, so, because I was watching the reconstruction before we came, and you know when you see the Daleks coming down and they're on the
conveyor belt.
On the conveyor
yeah,
belt.
my favourite bit.
So they 1, 2, 3, 4. They whip round the back and come back in again. How many did we have?
I think we had 4.
We had 4.
I think so.
Only 4.
I think so.
So what about the bit where they're all going and there's a whole
Oh, we
group
had a
of them.
few cutouts.
Cutouts.
Yeah, black and white photo cutouts.
Fantastic.
And people were behind these two-dimensional cutouts, wiggling them a little bit.
I love it.
Oh yes, every cheat in the book we were able to pull out. And I suppose that's one of the joys of old-fashioned television, that you could, and I was saying earlier when I was speaking here this morning about the sets being tatty-looking, but that you could get away with that sort of tattiness, if I may call it that. Yes.
Yes, the designers were, I thought, because I remember that we would rush onto the set as soon as we could get there, because we wanted to see, we'd been working in the rehearsal room with tapes on the floor, wanted to see what it was going to look like, what they'd come up with, you know. And we thought, looking in hindsight, looking back, it occurred to me that these designers had come out of the war. So, because they were in their 20s, you know. So, and during the war, we made do. So they were very good at making do, which is the whole thing of the Daleks being created, the Cybermen being created, the hats in the moon base came out of, you know, what they were doing was using everything around them. And it was so inventive. And have to say, you know, it's so easy now. They can just do it on CGI. They just can,
CGI.
you know,
we have a TARDIS happily spinning through outer space, which you could never have done back then at the time.
It's sorting out the men from the boys, isn't it, darling? You see.
Speaking of sorting out the men from the boys, and this is not going to be the question you're expecting now, I'm sure. The Daleks first turn up. Now, obviously, you know of the Daleks because Doctor Who's always sort of had them, but you'd never met them before. What was your feeling on and actually seeing them up close and personal for the first time, apart from the tattiness?
Well, when you watch, I think that was the moment, because I remember that I once said, oh, Polly was a frightened and weedy lady, and I got a whole load of letters from the fans saying, no, she wasn't, what are you talking about? But that was the moment when Polly lost it completely. No, these were. And so I love it. There's the bit where Ben says, look, there's a cupboard. Would you feel safer if you get in a cupboard, Duchess? And I said, yes. You know, when you meet the Daleks, hide in a cupboard. There's nothing to be. You can't be brave, and you can't argue with them. You know, because Polly would like to argue and get in there. And say, what's wrong with you? Why don't you feel something? But with the Daleks, no, hide in the cupboard.
Very wisely, and of course, it's the second time you've directed them, so they're pretty much old hat to you, or are you trying to think of new ways to bring them on?
Trying to find different ways, possibly, yes. And realising that getting them together in large numbers was obviously going to be effective. Although I always remember that very first shot that I ever showed a Dalek was the plumber's plunger coming out from below the camera, which I think was a bit of coup de théâtre on my part. I thought it was brilliant.
Absolutely.
I thought I was a genius then.
Well, you were. There was no doubt of it.
I think it's one of those pivotal. I mean, Doctor Who's always had a history of great cliffhangers and sometimes not so great cliffhangers, but I think that was the one that really kind of set the seal on what Doctor Who was going to be in the future.
Yes.
Did you set out to make Power as scary as possible? Because it's one of the stories in which they are initially very sneaky, they're very kind of manipulative, and then it's just sort of like, oh, if you're human, you're dead, that's it, game over.
It's a strange story. I mean, I forget an awful lot of it. Really, all I've heard recently was the sound version that Annika did the commentary for. I listened to this to remind myself of it, and it struck me that the story, as far as one could tell just from hearing the sound, was very muddled. There seemed to be a lot of different power factions working, not the least of which were the Daleks, who were so subtle that they pretended to be your master, I am your servant, but in fact they were your master.
Get you in the voice box in a minute.
But the story itself seemed to be incredibly involved with different sort of factions. I could hardly work it out.
Was that perhaps something that had been deliberately sort of planned in case that you had difficulties with the Doctor, so there was a lot going on elsewhere, so you could deflect attention away from him if
maybe that's a fact. I hadn't thought of that.
I don't think so. I think they made it complicated, but I think that this story was the one that they pulled out all the stops on, because it had to be, because if we didn't make it successful, we wouldn't have a show. So
that's true.
I think they made it as interesting and involved as possible. I think that was their
Well, certainly it was intriguing. There was a lot of intrigue going on. You didn't quite know who was on whose side.
No. It's awful for me, because when I watch it now in the reconstructions, all I get caught up with was those ghastly Bermuda shorts I had to wear.
Oh. And you do like your clothes.
Typical old actress, all you do is think about yourself and how you look.
But you then, this must be about the time you sort of figured you might take a hiatus from Doctor Who, because I don't think you worked with Patrick again whilst he was the Doctor.
No.
Was that a conscious choice? I mean, surely Annika would have loved you to work with her.
I don't remember. That isn't just a tactful answer. I genuinely don't remember. I think I was fully occupied with other work in the department, actually.
Because you were producing as well as
No,
as
I was
directing.
only directing.
You were only directing. Internet movie database. Damn you! You're wrong again.
You
was
can't
that how
trust
the
that,
internet?
That, yeah,
well,
it was off the internet.
I later
yes.
did do. I mean, I have been a producer. It's not a role I like. I always wanted to stay a director. And I was offered the job as a producer, probably to kick me upstairs, but I said, no, I want to stay directing.
Absolutely, stick on the shop floor.
Quite right, too.
So when Patrick arrived for the very first time in rehearsals, obviously you'd heard of him, he was an established actor, he'd just done a very well-received Quilp in the old Curiosity Shop.
Yes.
What was your reaction to the minute he sort of walked in the door? Did he come and say hello?
It was wonderful. I just have this really clear memory that we're sitting in the St Helens Church Hall, and we're all in there, and it's Monday morning, and the door goes chicka chicka. We're waiting, we know. The door goes chicka chicka. In he comes, little Patrick in his little red cardigan and his little Greek bag, and we all got on our feet and went, yes! You know, it was fantastic. And he was all, it's very kind of you. You know, sweet.
He was such a modest man, wasn't he?
He was a very modest
Incredibly
man.
modest, yeah.
He was also, you know, deeply spiritual. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
And he came one time to have lunch with us. He was so excited. He came on a Sunday lunch and he said, I've had a lucid dream. I've had this lucid dream and I know what I'm doing. He was so excited. And that memory has been I've been reminded of that by my mother's help at the time, who I re-met a few months ago, and she said, I'll never forget that, because Doctor Who came in and he was talking all about this, babbling on about this dream he had and how excited he was. So, another aspect of him.
Yeah, Patrick's not always thought of as being unsociable is probably the wrong word, because he's very private away from the cameras.
Yes.
I mean, but you're clearly both
Yes.
great friends and great respects. I mean, did you actually sort of spend a lot of leisure time together, or was working on Doctor Who so intense you just thought,
there was very little time.
Only a bit of leisure time. I went to his house once. We went to his house with our children and we all went swimming together. I know, an outdoor pool. I think we're taking a picnic in Kew Gardens or something.
Lovely.
And it wasn't a very nice day.
Lovely.
But yes, I mean, we went to each other's homes about once each, that's all. But it was just establishing a relationship, really. It wasn't to develop further than that, although I worked with him on several other occasions during our careers.
Yes, and the same for me, really, that he would come to dinner because he liked being with Mick Goff and family life. But mostly, I mean, you know, it was difficult to find these times because we worked really hard.
Yeah.
We were working really hard. And Kip Pedler came and had dinner too. So, you know, because I was doing the social thing, cooking the nice meal and having the good people. But when we finished Doctor Who, I never saw him again. I didn't think that I wouldn't see him again.
Yeah.
Just he was busy doing that and I was busy doing something else. You think later on, but actually the time went by and it never happened. So I could be sad about that. But he's here now, you see, that's the thing. He's a wicked old devil.
Was he always a practical joker? Because
yeah.
You played the practical. I mean, you started it really with the Comeback Bill T-shirt.
Yeah.
So did he get his own back on you?
No.
Ah.
No, that would be later on when he got to be with Fraser, and the two of them were like two schoolboys together, and they were doing all those jokes with Debs. But he didn't do that with us.
And because you were already the established sort of pairing, as it were, and that would have been intrusive.
I mean, we had fun, but we didn't. It was a different. Mike and I were grown-ups.
Yeah, right, okay. On that note, this is clearly a first, I'm going to throw open to the floor, the seated banks anyway, and ask if anybody has any questions about Power or Patrick for either of our two guests. Gentleman at the back in the multicoloured shirt.
Shout!
How do you feel about seeing your work reworked?
God, dear.
Another remake, oh God, what are they going to do to it? Or are you actually...
Are you thinking about our Power remake? What are your feelings about seeing your work reworked and reimagined?
Well, I think it's going to be very exciting to see it.
It's not so much worry for Annika because there's no Polly in it.
Oh, is there no Polly in it?
no
I'm
Polly.
going home. That was going to be the best bit.
Without Polly, I can't see it working,
You
really.
see.
But I mean, so little nothing of Power of the Daleks bar a few clips sort of exist now, and and is that sort of very sad that for you personally that you can't sort of go back and revisit work, or is that not the way you look at it?
Well, I look at it more on the fact that the BBC, without hindsight, couldn't see what it was throwing away when it junked it. Little did it know it was going to become what it has worldwide, and what it could have earned from it. Could have given up the licence fee, I think.
Yeah, because I think there's only the one complete story of yours, The War Machines, your very first one, The War Machines.
Yeah.
There's all just bits of everything else, which must be
And
frustrating.
I'm surprised they didn't keep that one as the first for the new Doctor.
I know, that was so stupid.
That's quite
What were
extraordinary.
You'd
Oh, it was
imagine.
What were they thinking?
Were they?
Well, they
thinking?
weren't
They
thinking.
weren't thinking.
No, they weren't thinking.
Does anybody else have a
Another
question?
question. Keep them
Yes,
coming,
go
otherwise
there.
we're going.
Yes.
We'll leave you.
may go
We'll have to
anywhere.
leave you. No.
Any hands?
No. They
Oh,
just
there is a hand. I
Somebody
beg your
saying
pardon.
something.
They just
Yes,
have somebody
three
waving
rows
away
back,
there.
lady there with the black t-shirt.
Yeah.
Did any of the monsters on the set escape or even in the filming? And if so, which ones were they?
Is that Sophie?
Yes.
Hey, what did you ask?
Were there any monsters you found particularly scary on set? Or indeed watching on television?
Well, you know, the Daleks, you see, somebody was saying this morning, some grown-up man from the radio was saying, you know, I'm not quite sure, they're not going to move, are they? They are scary, they go on being scary, they'll be scary forever. And I think they're the ones who frightened me most. The Cybermen, I knew they were lovely dishy actors inside, so I didn't mind those so much. and the Macra Terror, we had this big crab thing. That was just a nuisance because it was big and awkward and didn't work really well, and you had to do a lot of overacting to pretend that you were afraid of it and stuff.
Yes.
So I think it was really, I mean, you know, tonight we'll all sit and watch, and we're going to see Matt, and you know, and there's a million Daleks. It's the whole world is full of Daleks, you know. And I'm glad I'm with a bunch of people watching because my sofa's against the wall.
I must admit, actually, to put a small anecdote of mine in, we did the live theatre adaptations of Evil and Dalek Masterplan. When we did Evil of the Daleks, there you go, we did that down at the Theatre Royal. And several times, there were several occasions during the runs where the Daleks would come on with all the smoke and lights and everything else, and small children would have to be led screaming from the audience.
Yeah.
And it wasn't so much the screaming kids as the parents who were going, "You little sod, I really wanted to see this." And it was all the parents that really were desperate to see them. But for the small children, they're completely believable.
Yeah.
They utterly buy into them. And that's a wonderful advantage to have before you even start.
Yeah. Thanks, Sophie. That was a good question.
Anyone else?
Somebody at the
Oh,
back,
yes,
I think,
there's
is
a
waving away.
chap there.
Don't-
I'll come back
we'll
to you
get
in a minute. We'll come back to you in a bit. Chap in black there.
Talk about meeting Peter Cook and Dudley Moore. What was that like? What memories do you have of them?
So what did you
Meeting
say?
Peter Cook and Dudley Moore, what memories do you have of the
Well,
terrible twosome?
Long memories, because Peter was a friend. In fact, I'm still very close to his original wife, and then therefore with Dudley. So that was lovely, and we hung out together. But one lovely bit was going to New York and being in New York, and they were in New York, and they were the toast of the town, and being in New York with the most successful people who happened to be your friends was the most exciting place to be. And at one of these great big enormous parties, Dudley's playing on the piano, and he always used to like to have very pretty girls sitting next to him. So that was me sitting there smiling away, and he was playing, and me thinking, I made it, this is it, this is the best, you know. And Peter was doing something called the Dead Sea Tapes he was doing. I have never laughed so much. He was such a funny man. He never stopped. It was very difficult being married to him because he never stopped. And it just came pouring out of him. He was extraordinary. And just, you know, you would be hopeless. You would be awash. You'd be on the floor. Just, you know, stop, Peter, stop it, you know, because he just would go on and on. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
And there was someone at the back who had a question. Yep, sing out.
Patrick was very pleased about that too. He liked.
So sing out nice and loud.
Next year, Doctor Who's celebrates its 50th birthday.
Yep.
How do you feel about the contributions you brought to Doctor Who?
With Doctor Who's 50th anniversary coming up, how do you feel about the contribution that each of you has made to the series?
Rather proud.
Yes, I agree.
Rightly so,
If we
rightly so.
hadn't been there at the beginning, it might never have got off to a good start. Thank you. Yeah, we can take pride in that.
I've just been given the inevitable wind it up
now.
symbol.
Well, I hope that we're going to be, massively involved in this 50th
Yes.
celebration.
Yeah, absolutely. Celebrating the show's past, present, and hopefully long future. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been wonderful talking to them both. Please give it up for Christopher Barry and Annika Wills.
Darling.
Lovely.
Oh, you are a beauty. Can I take you home?